Welcome back to CBS This Morning. There is a major development in the case of Breonna Taylor. The 26-year-old EMT was shot and killed in her home during a Louisville police raid in March. Yesterday, Taylor's mother filed a request for a new grand jury and an independent prosecutor to review her daughter's death. Now, this follows our exclusive interview with two grand jurors in the case. They told us that they were never presented with the option of deliberating murder or manslaughter charges, which contradicts statements made by the Kentucky Attorney General. His name is Daniel Cameron. First on CBS This Morning, Ryan Nichols, the president of the Fraternal Order of Police chapter that represents the Louisville Metro Police Department, is talking about the investigation. He also responded to what Breonna Taylor's boyfriend, that's Kenneth Walker, says unfolded when police raided Taylor's home.
A tragedy did in fact happen. A police officer was critically injured. A young woman was fatally injured. And you know, the long, thorough investigation ensued, and that's the process that should happen.
You know, there are two sides, of course, to every story, but what is not in dispute is that Breonna Taylor is dead, that she was killed in a hail of police gunfire. But let's go to Kenneth Walker and his encounter with police. 32 shots fired that night after he fired what he said was one warning shot, not knowing what was happening in his apartment.
So I do believe that the officers were definitely justified in returning fire.
32 shots, Ryan? 32 shots?
Well, in a situation like that, when you return fire to stop a threat, typically you may not be aware of how many rounds someone else is firing, how many other officers are firing, and perhaps you may not have an accurate count of the rounds you fired in a high-stress situation like that.
How do you explain the incident report from the night that said that there was no forced entry in the apartment? We know that's not true. They said that there were no shots that were fired when Breonna Taylor was hit at least 5 times.
Obviously, the information had not been completely filled out in the portion of the incident report that was released. Not by any means suggesting that the police were saying none of those things occurred, because it was obvious they had. Not being part of that investigation, I think probably the report should not have been released at that time.
You have the attorneys for Kenneth Walker claiming cover-up. You have the grand jurors who talked to us a couple of days ago.
They covered it up. That's what the evidence that I saw. And I felt like there should have been lots more charges.
I want to get your response to their belief that there was and is a cover-up by the Louisville Police Department about what happened that night.
I don't believe there's a cover-up of anything that occurred. Can I definitely say affirmatively that no mistakes on anything were made? Obviously not. But I don't believe that there was any type of cover-up. And if there was, that would definitely be found out by the many entities that are conducting these investigations.
Are you comfortable, Ryan, with the grand jury's findings in the case?
I have faith that the Attorney General did a thorough and complete investigation and has a competent, qualified staff to do that.
You're calling Attorney General Cameron's investigation a complete and thorough investigation. Other people would disagree with you about that. That's why the more you hear about this case, the more questions are being raised. Do you see that?
Yes, ma'am, I understand that. There's other agencies and entities that are still looking into things from other aspects of the investigation. If they conclude that it was a tragic incident, but nothing illegal happened, then we have to be willing to deal with that and move forward from that also.
You don't believe race has played a role here at all?
No, I don't think this occurred as a result of any type of racial issue, or that this was determined by race somehow.
Do you think outside of this case that the Louisville Police Department has a problem with racial bias?
No, I think we're a very diverse department. We try to stay up with the national best practices.
In 2020, 45% of the arrests have been black people, but they only make up 23% of the Louisville population. And you go from that to the tragedies that occur. How do you explain that?
Well, so I don't have all the specific numbers of if you're talking shooting tragedies or anything like that occur.
Well, we can agree that there is a difference in the number when it comes to black victims and white victims at the hand of the police. Can we at least agree on that?
Sure. So the circumstances that lead up to every specific incident, whether it's an officer-involved shooting here or anywhere else, you know, an investigation occurs.
How do you explain how many police officers do not seem to be held accountable in these type of incidents?
Well, I would say that once those investigations occur, the police are and definitely should be held accountable.
But they're not, though, Ryan Nichols. They're not held accountable.
Well, ma'am, if the law here is such that nothing illegal occurred on either side of that door that night, and our Attorney General did find some charges to pursue and is going to pursue those charges as it relates to one officer, how is the accountability not occurring?
What's the morale of your police department these days?
So morale is low here. They want to be here, and they don't want citizens to have to live in fear of violence of any kind.
Right.
And so it's very frustrating.
It is frustrating. An attorney for Sergeant John Mattingly also said that Attorney General Cameron conducted a careful, thorough investigation and came to the right decision. Nichols said when it comes to change, his union is always interested in fair and balanced reforms that enhance policing. And Officer John Mattingly was the one when Kenneth Walker fired the warning shot. The police say that his shot hit John Mattingly in the leg. The ballistics report seems to say that it's inconclusive. But it is such a, I appreciate Ryan Nichols taking the time. I thought we had a very good conversation. Never good, though, when people go, ma'am.
Yeah.
But we had a very good conversation, I think. But you have that story in the news again this morning from Marcellus Tennis, where the police body camera wasn't activated.
Yeah.
And I think we continue to have this conversation and people get frustrated on both sides.
Yeah.
Police are frustrated, the community's frustrated. We go round and round and nothing changes.
Well,
that's the frustration.
To the point that the two grand jurors made yesterday.
Yes.
They don't believe that the government in Kentucky's account,
Exactly.
you know, jibes with what they saw.
Exactly.
And so there's a discrepancy there.
I'm fascinated by the justifiable use of force. Kenneth Walker's a legal Kentucky gun owner. He fires one shot, 32 come back.
Yeah.
The union saying, yeah, well, that's how it goes.
Stressful moments.
People should vote because criminal law is written by general assemblies. If you vote and different people are in there, you can change the law.
Yes. Very good point, Tom.